We've got a very special word that can save your life. We're going to talk about it in the hangar. Welcome to a special episode of In the Hangar. We're coming to you from AirVenture. We're at the Flying Ice booth where using a bunch of different codes can get you 10%. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Christy Schaefer. It's a little chilly this morning.
It is a little chilly here, and it's been a great show so far. And we're also brought to you by Clemens Insurance. Jerry can really work a good deal for you. Trust me, he did it for me. We got our regular special people, Josh and Chelsea.
Regular special people.
Regular guests, special hosts, special people. Thanks for coming, guys.
Always happy to be on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on here again. I think today is going to be a really important topic.
Yeah, it is an important topic. Chelsea, and this has come about, we've been shooting on Arrowverse. We've been shooting a show called Throttle Jockey, and we've gotten to spend some time just talking about stuff. And some different situations have come up where the use of one special word, a very short word, could really save some people's lives. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we have been spending so much time commuting back and forth from these shoots and talking about different flying experiences, and with those experiences and opportunities come the power of saying no to flights.
No.
So you can start first with no thank you and then get stern and just a flat out no. I think that when you're first getting going in aviation and you're excited and enthusiastic and you want to get as much experience as possible, you can find yourself in some situations that are maybe not the safest.
Well, there's that people pleaser element too.
Yep,
I don't want to
absolutely.
upset this person or that person. There's been several high profile accidents in the last few years where the pilot definitely should not have gone, but because they had high profile clientele that really needed to get to where they were going, they took the risk anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, and let's talk some specifics without naming names, because we don't want to do that. But I think each one of us has situations we look back and debrief going, I should have said no.
Yeah, so I think it was about a year and a half ago. I won't name names.
Right.
The person was recently killed in a GA accident for the exact same thing that they did right before we got on the plane with them.
And you took the flight with that person.
So we were there. I was doing a pre-buy on this particular airplane, so they wanted me to go with them to see everything in action, record any squawks, get a better feel for the engine and the health of the airplane. And Josh was with me, and we found ourselves about to get into a plane, and the pilot had looked at the plane. That was his pre-flight, just a quick glance. Yep, it's an airplane. I asked him if he sumped the tanks, and he said no, it was just fueled. I asked him if he checked the oil, and I thought he was joking because he said, I checked it last week. And so we ended up doing those action items.
Oh, so you didn't at that point, you didn't say no, but you went and did the pre-flight yourself.
Yes,
okay.
We absolutely did. And we were already looking at the aircraft top to bottom when we walked up to it, because we were there to do a pre-buy.
Yeah.
So I was already gathering my list and some data and getting an overall view of the aircraft, and down underneath it, crawling around, just looking for, signs and the story of the plane. And we ended up going on a flight in that aircraft. And after dinner that evening, Josh and I sat and had a long debrief on, we shouldn't have flown with that guy. We didn't know. He was rated and had experience. We didn't know if he was proficient. He's in a position to sell a plane. So he wanted to make sure that that plane was going to go on that flight for that potential customer.
Oh.
And so who knows what his currency was, his proficiency. But we saw immediately when we got there how he felt about doing a real proper pre-flight. And I really did think he was joking when he said he checked it last week, so don't worry about it. And then it didn't end up happening. And we were like, okay, we'll check it.
Yeah, we kind of looked at each other and we were like, was he serious? And then that's when Chelsea stepped in, and it wasn't exactly an awkward situation at that point because it was a pre-buy environment. So, and she's a mechanic, so it was like
a mechanic question, not a pilot-to-pilot question.
That's how I think it was interpreted. But this was more like a why aren't you doing a pre-flight kind of thing. And then once we got in the plane, it was the two of us in the back seat monitoring things, mainly her monitoring, and I was just kind of there. And then it was the seller and then the buyer up front And before takeoff, there was like no positive exchange of controls. They were talking about who's going to do the takeoff very like lightly and like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and call for takeoff and blah, blah, blah. And I stepped in and was like, let's brief a positive exchange of controls and make sure we know who's doing what, because I could just see that going bad real fast. And then when we got on the ground, like Chelsea said, we kind of looked at each other and said that was really dumb for us to go on that flight.
Well, let me ask you this. When you talked about proficiency, that's not something that people wear as a name badge. When and what can you say to somebody to find out if they're proficient? In other words, I mean, every single flight you go with somebody on, or do you go, hey, how proficient are you? Or do you just ask that when you start to see warning signs?
That's a good question. Chelsea, actually, I had never thought to do this before, but I flew with a guy probably 6 months ago or something like that. Had never met him before or anything. We were just chatting online. And he was coming to pick me up, and we were going to go fly in the airplane. And it's all, it's a question of proficiency. Well, how often do they fly? Chelsea looked up the tail number and was like, oh, this guy flies often. He flies his plane a lot.
Yeah.
So in that case, you didn't ask him.
No. And then of course after the flight, I was like, that is a sharp pilot. He is on
he
it.
is phenomenal.
Okay.
So that was a very comforting thing, and I never thought to do that. Chelsea just whipped up the tail number and was like, oh, he flies at least once a week.
Well, Christy wants to look at everybody's logbooks when they show up. No, I'm just
I was gonna say so.
Honestly,
so that's the thing is.
no.
So what would you guys see? What would you recommend to pilots who want to go fly with other people? I mean, you can look up tail numbers, but what if, okay, like I'm in a flying club.
Yeah.
So that the looking up the tail number doesn't always compute or equate.
It might show the plane flies every day, but it's not the same person.
Right. So how would you then segue into I mean, I've gotten asked this question before. I do a lot of discovery flights, and I've actually had the grandparent of a young individual that wanted a discovery flight with me. She asked me straight up, how often do you fly? What kind of pilot are you? She didn't know to ask me like, what are my ratings and stuff like that. But she was asking me very basic level questions. I had no problem answering them. Yeah. And I would think that if you ask a fellow pilot, hey, how proficient are you? How often do you fly? What are your hours? What are your ratings? If they start getting defensive about it, for me, that's a red flag.
Oh, that
tells you all you need to know right there. And I think with type A personalities that are so common with pilots, it's the ego is going to get in the way pretty fast if they don't have that under control, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I think giving them just a little interview almost before you go fly, even if it's one of your hangar neighbors and y'all are just going to go fly a little bit, pay attention to how they have done their pre-flight in the past if you've ever seen it, or before the flight, watch how they are doing their pre-flight.
Well, and it's also important to know that they're proficient in that airplane.
Right.
Because they could be a 20,000 hour airline pilot that hasn't flown a 172 in like 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever I first got into aviation and I was out at the airport all the time and doing maintenance here and there, lots of people that I looked up to, that I wanted to be like, that I felt like I really admired, would offer me, hey, do you want to go fly? I'd never flown in this type of plane before. I want to say yes and I want to go. And I found myself getting out of airplanes and being like, that was really dumb.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I should not have gone on that flight.
I have gone on a couple of flights before with individuals, and I walked away with that exact same feeling, and I was like, never again. That was really dumb.
So you have to trust the pilot and know the pilot and the plane. So the real question is, and I would challenge the viewers, like, start letting us know in the comments, what do you think is a good way to help figure out where they are?
The great thing about doing a show at AirVenture, but
that's right.
It's okay. You brought up something about the mom who's not a pilot asking. For those that are not pilots who might get on a GA plane, I think it is totally 100% okay for you non-pilots that are about to get on to ask questions. To ask like, how often do you fly? Are you current? And to Josh's point, proficiency may be a tougher for a non-pilot to ask, but just, get a feel for them. It is okay to say no to getting on a plane, especially if you don't feel right about it.
Absolutely.
Right. And one thing on the flight instruction side. So when I became a flight instructor, I was, in my early 20s, and I was just eager to start hopping into different types of planes and start mentoring people who want to get more into flying and stuff like that. I said yes to getting into a lot of airplanes with a lot of pilots that I absolutely should not have gotten into.
That you wouldn't today.
Right, that I would absolutely not get into today. So there was a thing in Austin, Texas a while back. It kind of blew up on the Facebook groups around there. Examiners were starting to say, we will not give check rides in airplanes without shoulder harnesses.
We'll give check rides without what?
No check rides unless there are shoulder harnesses in the airplane.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of aircraft owners and pilots were saying, well, that's total crap. That's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And the examiners were standing their ground and catching a lot of heat for it. I stepped in, with my little voice. I'll just give my 2 cents in the comments on Facebook. I said, look, it's up to them to determine what they want to risk their lives for or not.
It's their boundary.
That is their boundary.
Yep.
And if you are so cheap as to not put a $400 set of shoulder harnesses in your airplane, that's your problem. And I basically said all that in the comments, and I had examiners like texting me and messaging me like, thank you, because that's their boundary to set. And now, like, that kind of woke me up a little bit, and then all the conversations Chelsea and I have had.
Yeah.
I don't flight instruct in airplanes without shoulder harnesses. I won't give a flight review if you don't have shoulder harnesses or an IPC. No. It's not, and a lot of people, I know Chelsea has said this to me before too, some people think, oh, shoulder harnesses are just the difference between an open and a closed casket.
No.
That's an uneducated comment.
Right.
That is a very
Absolutely.
uneducated perspective, and it's wrong. It's
The
just
FAA
wrong.
just released some data, and it said 1 out of 3 fatal accidents could have been prevented
With shoulder harnesses?
With shoulder harnesses.
Wow.
Didn't
1
need to be
out of
fatal.
3.
Yep. When I was in the market
Wow.
for buying an airplane, that was a huge topic. I was not going to buy an airplane without shoulder harnesses.
And if you have an airplane without shoulder harnesses, get them installed.
Yeah,
They have
absolutely.
made it to
Yep.
where it is no longer a major alteration.
A lot
They're
of
making
people
it
are
so
getting these
easy.
older planes that they're legal not to have shoulder harnesses,
Right.
but 1 out of 3, you know.
I'm going to get the 5-point
How could you
harness
not?
put in the Warrior.
Legal
now,
versus
like in the-
smart. Yeah.
Another
legal
thing
versus smart.
that I have started doing is I have a little H3R Halon fire extinguisher that I installed
I
in
have
my
one.
Yep.
aircraft.
I have one
But
too.
I
I do too.
actually don't keep it in my aircraft. I keep it in my flight bag.
Oh.
To where if I go
Oh,
fly with other
interesting.
pilots, I don't know what their rat's nest of an electrical system is under
nice.
the panel or what issue we may
Ah.
have. And it's small.
It's-
It's a small
Okay,
fire
I would-
extinguisher, and it's really easy to, when I fly, I put it into the cradle.
Okay, I want to
That's
get a
a
link
great
to
idea.
that.
Yeah,
That's a great
absolutely.
idea.
And if I remember, I'll put it in the description.
I'm doing a talk on Friday, the upgrades, urgent and the unnecessary. And my 2 urgent upgrades to any aircraft owner or any pilot, carry it in your flight bag when it comes to the fire extinguisher, is a fire extinguisher and shoulder harnesses.
Well, and I'll tell you this, my family, they were in our Ford F-250 truck on a long road trip, and it caught fire. You know, so we have fire extinguishers
those older
everywhere
trucks?
right
Yeah.
now.
But
Yeah, you
there's
never
a
know.
breakdown lane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, up in the sky, there is no breakdown lane.
yeah, exactly.
And those two,
they were able to pull over.
Right.
Yeah, but
and those 2 urgent upgrades that she just listed, shoulder harnesses and fire extinguishers, those are the 2 cheapest
Yeah.
Oh, I
that
know.
you can do.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
absolutely going to get the small one for my flight bag. That's a great
It's
note.
yeah, it's a fantastic idea, and
Yeah.
it just increases your survivability of one of those situations so much for not that much money.
No,
All
that's
right,
a
I want to
great
talk
idea.
about one of my early situations. I'm a very young pilot, young as far as my hours, and first time we're buying a plane. This is when we bought Lola. I had a partner. We go out to California to this first time. You know, you got all that kind of emotion going on. You see the plane, and I'm like, I want to be the nice guy, so I let the partner be the first one to fly with the broker. Okay, and so I'm going to get in the back. So I get in the back of Lola, and those guys talk and whatever, they get in, and we go flying. And my partner's flying, and the broker's in the right seat brokering. I never, you know, at this point I'm just a private pilot. I didn't know that, like, is he a CFI? Is he not? You know, I had no clue. Now my partner was an ATP rated pilot, but anyway, all that's to say is that we go out, fly around, we come back, do one touch and go. We're on the departure leg now, and all of a sudden the engine coughs and goes out.
What?
And I'm in the back, and actually they had turned cross. So he turned cross, so we're heading away from the airport. And they start messing with stuff and continue on. I'm like, and I didn't want to say anything because they're in the middle of an emergency. I don't want to contribute to the
Yeah.
chaos. So I finally said, can you solve that by turning back to the airport? And eventually, I mean, probably 10 seconds
Yeah.
total time, but, switched to fuel tanks, fuel pump. We got the engines back up. It was still sputtering a little bit, but we came in and made a landing. We were out of fuel.
What?
Yeah. And
Like no fuel in the tank.
fuel exhaustion.
This is brand new information.
Yeah, how
didn't
come
know
you've
this?
never
I
told
did
us this
not
story
know
before?
this.
So, well, because I'm a bit embarrassed too,
Okay.
because even though I wasn't the pilot flying, I was a pilot. I should have made sure that those guys did a pre-flight.
Absolutely.
And I did.
Absolutely.
I'm playing the role of passenger.
That could have been
Also- Right.
really bad.
Also, when you
think?
go and fly with people, yeah, I'm glad you're still here.
Yeah.
I know.
And I'm glad you could tell that story too, because
I
that
guess
shows
this
that
is the first time I'm
happens.
telling the story.
That can happen. It's not outside the realm of
No,
possibility.
but I guess one of the things I talked to a pilot mentor friend of mine about this shortly after, and I'm like, can you believe those guys? Blah 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 blah. And he said, Dan, you could have stopped that.
Yeah, you're a pilot too.
Yeah, and that's when I went, oh crap. And that's probably why I haven't told the story until now. I'm embarrassed
Yeah.
that I
That's
didn't
fair.
speak up.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it
No,
can
but-
happen. We are
but
all
we
human.
all-
We're
Sometimes you're in the midst of a situation and you can't realize, we prep all the time. Oh, that will never be me. That will never happen to me. Oh, I will pick up on that before it happens. Sometimes it's just kind of unfolding very organically and you don't realize the situation.
There is
that
context.
Yep.
There's
starting to
always
build.
context. It's I'm telling you guys, it's never black and white. We had this conversation
Yeah.
recently. It's never black and white. There's a
Yeah.
lot of context behind it. But either way, somebody stepping up and asking the questions or saying no can mean the difference between an NTSB report or not.
Well,
Right.
okay, so you go back to the worried about offending somebody by doing this,
which is a big roadblock.
which is a big roadblock.
Yeah.
If my takeaway from your story
Yeah.
is that if in that situation a firm, you need to freaking do a pre-flight, and no, I'm getting off. Let me off. Shut the engines. I'm getting out.
Well, looking back,
Might have made him a better pilot and maybe avoided what came, his death.
Right.
Maybe,
After,
maybe,
yeah.
but then it maybe not.
I mean, I don't want to
maybe
put any
not.
pressure
Maybe
on
it
you
would have
guys,
been like,
but
Chelsea,
I think
she's
that
crazy.
If we remind ourselves in the moment that it's okay to say no, that when they get offended, they get offended. If they improve,
Yeah.
they improve, and it might save their life down the road.
But
Right.
here's the
Agreed.
thing: if this pilot or whatever pilot is skipping pre-flight, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree
on
with
the
that.
sloppiness.
Yeah, I agree.
And also from a mechanic standpoint, I had just signed a plane off. The owner was there picking it up. I was going to sump the tanks, but there was not a sump cup before the owner got there.
Oh, that tells you something.
And there was not a sump cup. The owner got there, and I didn't see the owner dig out a sump cup because I didn't know if they knew where one was, and I didn't. The tanks, the maintenance that the plane had just gone through, the caps were off. There could have been debris in there.
Oh,
the plane had been there
no.
for
Oh,
months.
wow.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
And this pilot was like, no, I'm good. I asked him if he wanted a sump cup, and he blew me off on it. As a mechanic, I'm like, okay, so now if this pilot takes off and crashes, I'm the last entry. As a mechanic, you are now a liability to me. Even
Right.
if it was your fault and pilot error, I am going to watch this pilot jet off in a plane, so I went and found a sump cup.
Good for
and
you.
ended up just sumping it myself. I didn't know if he had one in the plane that I just wasn't finding in a seat back
Right.
pocket or something. And you also don't want to step on the toes, but also just for aircraft familiarity, going and doing your own pre-flight, either with the pilot who knows the plane, asking them questions about it, getting you both in the right mindset before you take off on that flight, and doing your own pre-flight just to get to know the plane can be a great start to get to feel the feel for the plane and a feel for the pilot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have come across a lot of pilots who don't do their own pre-flights. They kind of glance at the airplane. Yep, iPad's in the cradle, we're good to go, that kind of thing.
Or just maybe they check the oil.
Or what's
Right.
even better is when the CFI is there, just kind of hanging out in the corner, and the student is doing the pre-flight, but the CFI is not watching. I've
Right.
seen that over and over
Right.
again. Like,
And
you're a student, you need to watch them.
Exactly. And I think there's something to be said for the CFI giving the like image that they're kind of stepping away, give that confidence to the
Right.
student that
Absolutely.
it's on them, but keep an eye on it.
You need to watch them, though. That's what I'm saying. You don't need to helicopter mom them, but
Right.
you definitely need to watch them, because the student is going to be likely to miss something, or, yeah, that looks okay, that nose threat, and you're looking at it going, I don't think it does.
Right.
Stuff like that.
And we as pilots, I think that CFI, student pilot, mechanic, whatever it is, we have to just start getting not so afraid of offending.
we have to normalize
Be
it.
tactful, don't
Yeah.
be rude.
Yeah, you don't have to be a jerk.
You don't have to be a jerk about it, but we have to not be so scared of offending somebody by suggesting a correction or
We need to
suggesting
normalize these kinds of questions and inquiries.
We need to normalize questioning it. Exactly.
Well, and it goes to the mentality of, I don't want to be, in their minds, one of those kind of like OCD people. No, embrace it. Be the OCD
I'm
people.
you know
cool
what?
with it.
I'd rather be OCD and alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly.
Human
Exactly.
factors are real, and we all make mistakes. And there are
Absolutely.
some Jedi mind tricks out there to having these conversations with people without making it a direct attack.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Asking questions is a great way to do it.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
what you did. Hey, did you sump
Hey,
the?
I didn't see a sump cup. I was going to sump it for you. Do you have one, or do you want
Yeah.
me to go grab one?
Great question.
Yeah.
So you can do it by questions. That's a good way to do it.
And I
Not
think
like,
I
well,
think
you're-
it's
yeah.
like on the flight instructor side, you learn about the 5 hazardous attitudes. I
Right.
think if every pilot could just read the description of each one of those
over and over.
over and over again, they could internalize it a little bit and be like, okay, which am I engaging in any
Oh,
of
shoot,
these?
that's me today.
It's a real thing. Like,
No,
it's-
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you hear these things, hear the descriptions of them, it just makes you more aware.
Absolutely.
And that's all it is hazardous attitudes and lack of procedures and invulnerability and all that kind of stuff comes into play.
I'll give you another living example of this that I'm a little embarrassed about. So
Oh,
here we
gosh.
go again.
Oh, another
It's
one?
confession time here.
Confessions
So a
with Dan
couple years
Milliken.
ago, I was flying with a very young pilot, but a very good pilot. Okay, you know him. Actually, you all know him. And very capable. He was flying Lola. At this point, I'm a CFI. We're on a mission. And we've got to go really far. We've got to come back. We've planned it out. We do our we do everything right, okay? When we land at our destination, I had some business. Then we get back in the plane. He's going to fly at night. He's gotten rest. We've checked every box. And on departure, to come all the way back cross country, low voltage indicator. Well, and I've had that a bit on Lola. So we put down at the nearest airport was a Class C, because we were IFR at night. So Class C, we land, and I pull the cowl. I'm checking the belt. I'm checking some different things. I'm trying different things, and I keep trying them. And at one point, this individual says to me in his Kentucky accent, Dan, I think you just got some get-there-itis.
Oh.
You know, there's a 21-year-old kid telling me this.
I know exactly who you're
And-
talking about.
Yep.
I was like, dang, he's right. Okay, we're getting a hotel.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go grab a beer.
can always
Yeah.
grab a hotel. Always grab a
but he
hotel.
had no problem saying no, or at least
Calling
you know,
you
Bringing
out
it
a
to
little
your
bit.
attention.
And it's
yeah.
hard because he's younger. He had less hours, less ratings. It's not his plane.
Right.
You were probably he was probably working for you.
He was.
So you have all of these things stacked.
So
and you're
kudos
like,
to
do
him.
I say something?
He went through a whole bunch of barriers there, and
That's
came out
awesome.
and said it. Yeah, so it's awesome.
No,
is
and
a
that's part
great
of
pilot.
normalizing
Yeah,
it.
he
We
is a
need
great
to normalize it. This is a very heavy but much needed topic to
Yeah.
discuss. So I'm glad you guys were here to talk with us about
Thanks
it.
for having us on.
All right.
It is a
Appreciate
big
it, yeah.
topic.
All right, don't forget, guys, you can say no, and it can save your life. And don't
But
worry
don't-
about people thinking.
Don't say no to flying eyes.
But don't
though.
say no to Flying Eyes or Clemens Insurance. Also, 67 Designs. I use their camera mounts and iPhone tablet mounts for the plane. You can also get them for the car. They're amazing. 67D.com. Z-Vision, XEVision.com. The brightest landing and taxi lights. I'm getting some put on Lola. They're going to be amazing. Marshall Protective Services, MPSProtects.com. And Colton Mortgage, ColtonTakingOff.com. We'll see you later.
In the hangar.